Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Fear. I'm your host Zishan, and today I've got something that will keep you awake tonight. I'm going to take you on a terrifying journey through one man's encounter with a cargo that was never meant to be delivered. This is the story of the Cargo of Shadows by Mac MacArthur. Had been a trucker for nearly 20 years. We will hear the story directly from his side, so let's get into the story. Let me tell you about the last job I took. The one that still haunts me to this day. I've been a trucker for 2 decades now. You name the road, I've driven it. Through deserts, mountains, storms, and endless stretches of highway. Nothing scared me. But this job, this one was different. I got a call from a guy I didn't know. The instructions were vague. Pick up a load outside Flagstaff and deliver it to a warehouse deep in New Mexico. No details. Just a container, and a promise of more money than I'd ever seen for a single trip. Easy money, or so I thought. When I pulled up to the facility, something didn't feel right. The place looked abandoned, with rusted gates and no signage. There was only one guy there, an old man with hollow eyes. He didn't say a word, just handed me a clipboard and pointed to the container, a massive cold steel box that looked like it had been left to rust for decades. No markings, no labels. It was just there, like it had been waiting for me. As I hooked the container to my rig, I swear the air changed. The temperature dropped, even though it was the middle of summer. And there was this strange hum. Low, barely noticeable at first, but it vibrated through my bones. I tried to shake it off, chalk it up to fatigue or the tension of the job. I climbed into the cab, cranked up the engine, and hit the road. But that hum, it followed me. It grew louder with every mile, creeping into my head. And then things started to get weird. First, my GPS went haywire, showing roads that didn't exist and routes that looped me back to the same stretches of highway. Then the CB radio crackled to life, nothing unusual except that no one was broadcasting, just static and something else. Whispers. I could barely make them out, but they weren't random. They were saying something. They were saying my name. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. No one knew I was out here. No one. And yet, the whispers, raspy and faint, kept hissing, "Mac." I told myself it was the wind, or maybe the truck's engine acting up. But I knew better. The darkness on that road was thick, oppressive, like something was watching from just outside the glow of the headlights. Every now and then I'd catch a glimpse of movement, figures standing along the roadside. They'd vanish as soon as I looked directly at them. Shadows, I told myself, just shadows. But they weren't. The further I drove, the louder the whispers became. And then I started hearing thuds, coming from inside the container. My heart pounded every time I heard it. Something was moving back there. But the load was supposed to be sealed, locked tight. There was no way anything should have been inside. I convinced myself it was just the road rattling the trailer, but the noise didn't stop. I needed a break. Pulled into a rest stop around midnight. The place was empty. No cars, no people. Just a few flickering lights and that awful heavy silence. I got out of the truck and walked around to the back of the container, feeling a cold sweat trickle down my spine. As I stood there, the whispers grew louder, like they were coming from inside the steel walls. I touched the container and it vibrated under my hand. Not from the engine, not from the road, something else, something alive. And then I heard it. My name. Clear as day, from inside the container. Mac. I stumbled back, my heart racing. This wasn't just cargo, it was something More. Something wrong. Panic started to creep in, but I forced myself to climb back into the cab. I had to finish this job, get to the drop-off, get paid, and forget about it. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't forget. Not ever. As I drove, the figures on the side of the road became more frequent. They weren't just shadows anymore. I could see them moving closer to the truck. Twisted forms, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, that I was just tired, but I knew better. They were there, and they were following me. Suddenly, the truck jerked. The container in the back shook violently, like something inside was trying to break out. My hands were sweating, gripping the wheel as I tried to keep control, and then I saw it, standing in the middle of the road. A figure, tall, dark, and completely still. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching as I skidded to a halt just inches from hitting it. It didn't move, just stood there watching. It had no face, no features, just a shifting black mass of shadow. I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that. Vanished into the night. I sat there gasping for air, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. But I couldn't. I couldn't rationalize it. The container was shaking again, and the whispers were back, louder than ever. "Release us!" they hissed over and over. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled over to the side of the road, jumped out of the cab, and ran to the back of the truck. My hands trembled as I unlocked the container. I didn't want to open it. I knew that whatever was inside wasn't something I could handle, but I had no choice. I threw open the doors, and there was nothing. The container was empty, but the shadows poured out. Like thick black smoke, they erupted into the air, swirling around me. I tried to back away, but they were everywhere, shifting, twisting, and whispering. These weren't just shadows. They were souls, trapped and tortured for God knows how long. I could feel their pain, their anger. It wrapped around me like ice, choking me, suffocating me. One of them, larger than the others, hovered right in front of me. Its form shifted, revealing a face, a man's face, twisted in agony. "Release us," it said again, but this time the voice was deeper, more desperate. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced, and then I remembered. The container. The strange symbols etched into the metal. They weren't just there for show, they were seals, bindings. The shadows were trapped, held prisoner by those symbols. Without thinking, I grabbed a crowbar from the truck and started smashing the symbols one by one. Each time I broke one, the shadows grew stronger, swirling faster around me. The air crackled with energy, cold and electric. My heart was pounding, my breaths coming in ragged gasps, but I kept going. Finally, the last seal shattered, and the shadows exploded into the night sky, disappearing into the darkness. The air went still. The hum was gone. The whispers were gone. And for the first time in hours, I could breathe. I collapsed to the ground, shaking, staring up at the stars. The weight, the pressure, the terror, it all lifted. I had done it. I had released them. But the horror of what I had seen, of what I had carried, still clung to me, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I made the delivery days later. The warehouse was just as strange as the pickup spot, run down, empty, except for that same old man standing there, waiting. He didn't ask me any questions, and I didn't offer any answers. But I'll tell you this. I'll never take another job like that again. Some loads are too heavy, not because of their weight, but because of what they carry. And this one? It carried the darkness of forgotten souls.